Welcome to Connect the Plots with Celia and Eric, a podcast about the stories that connect us.
3, 2, 1, and we're live. I'm Eric Grove, and I'm a writer, and this is my friend Celia, and she is a reader. And we are joined today by debut novelist C.N. Kuster. C.N., I kind of love this story about how we ended up meeting because it demonstrates how small, in some ways, the science fiction and fantasy community is. So my version of this story is that I've been friends with Fonda Lee for a while. So when I knew that my book was we'd been communicating off and on as my book was going through the contract phase and up to the point where it could be announced. And I told her up before I was even able to post publicly that my book, my contract had gone through. And I told her who the publisher is, which is Podium Publishing. Fonda suggested that I reach out to CN because Fonda had chatted with you about also being published by Podium Publishing. I think it was at at a coffee clutch, like a conversation.
Yeah, through SFWA, Science Fiction and
Yeah,
Fantasy.
was it at Worldcon or was it at a separate event?
So no, I had met her very briefly and sheepishly at Worldcon. She was at a party and a mutual acquaintance introduced us, and I was freaking out. So I kind of threw a bookmark at her and was like, "I love your work," and then ran away into the party.
Sometimes she gets that. So Fonda's like, you should reach out to C.N. Kuster. So I immediately search social media and I see that you are connected to another good friend of mine, Laura Cranehill.
Yes.
And I send a message to Laura and I say, hey, I want to reach out to this author, C.N. Kuster, but I'd like you to introduce us so that it doesn't look like I'm a stranger, just sort of sending a direct message in Instagram. And so Laura goes and sends you a message, and then that's how we got acquainted. But then after we started chatting, I also realized that you share an agent with another one of my good friends. So, again, all of these points of contact and communication that end up binding us all together.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then, because I got the message from Laura, and I was like, oh yeah, absolutely, tell him to reach out to me. And then I think it was only a few hours later that you reached out to me, and you mentioned that you heard about me through Fonda Lee, and I was like, that's not real. That's not a real thing that happened.
Fonda has, and I have told her this, and we chatted about this, I think it was not recorded, I think it was after the recording, about how impressed I am with Fonda's capacity to remember people, and she explained that she's particularly good at it when she's read a name. So having the name badge at the convention, I think, unlocks one of Fonda's superpowers, which is because I had the same experience when I first met her, being running into her again later and being she's maybe not going to remember me, or if she does, she's not going to remember my name. And she immediately remembered me, and she was like, "What's going on, Eric?" And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, and
she's great.
I can do it with with faces. I'll remember a face until the day I die, but the name doesn't always come back, So that's, and I'm like, you person, and I really mean it. I'm like, and then the name is just not in my brain.
That is why I do love that at most of the science fiction and fantasy events there will be name tags so that you don't even have to fake it. You can just be look at the name and then immediately know. So we're excited to have you here. It was fun. It was great for me to connect with somebody who shares a publisher and is kind of going through a debut journey a little bit before I am, because your book is due out the 23rd of June, which will be a couple of weeks after this episode airs, and my book is going to be coming out at the beginning part of 2027. So it's been good to connect on that regard. But I would like to just tell us more about your book. People may not have heard of your book because you're a debut author. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so it's called The Bloodweaver, all one word. It's the story of two siblings who get caught on opposite sides of this brewing war about whether or not this new magic, the titular blood weaving, should be allowed to exist or not. So that's kind of my elevator pitch. And then to get into it a little bit more, one of the siblings is a blood weaver, and after these people who are kind of pursuing blood weavers to kill and eliminate them arrive in his hometown, he ends up having to flee, kind of in search of this secret society that he hopes will kind of allow him to not only expand his craft, but kind of fight back against this force that he believes has wronged him and has persecuted him and others through kind of the course of his life. And then his sister, her girlfriend, ends up getting also identified unexpectedly by this band of violent hunters, if you will, and she ends up posing as one to try to keep her girlfriend safe, and ends up kind of in a position she didn't expect herself to be in, at the right hand of one of the leaders of this faction. So it's kind of dark, I would say it's a darker fantasy, and which is funny because people describe me as like, you're the most bubbly person, and I'm like, well,
I have a theory. I'm gonna pull an Eric and put on screen the Blood Weaver by C.N. Kuster. I have the uncorrected proof, and I love this cover. The fact that the articulation of the hand bones are glowing through. It's very lovely. I like it so much. It's what pulled me to it. On the free book table at NorwestCon.
I did. I smelled two of them on there.
And it's signed by the author. And I'm just going to read it real quick because I thought it was the cutest thing ever. Hey, stranger. Has anyone told you how awesome you are? Thanks for picking up this book. I hope you love it. NorwestCon 2026.
What I love about that book is that while we were getting started today, Celia just shows me that she's got this copy, and I'm like, how did you pull that off? She's like,
yeah,
you'll have to wait. You'll have to wait. It's a secret.
Save the content for the pod.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I brought a few arcs, and at the end of the convention, I was like, I realized as I was meeting people, I was like, I'm really bad at just being like, here's this book that I read, because in my mind, I was like, I don't want to make anybody feel like I'm expecting anything of them, and I was like, how do I convey oh, well, this would be a gift, and you don't have to do, just here you go. So a friend of mine who was there, Sierra Branham, who just recently debuted back in April. She wrote a book called Love Galaxy, which is really great sci-fi. Highly recommend you check it out. I was talking to her. I was like, what if I just put them on the freebie table and was like, let it find who it's supposed to find. And so I guess it's supposed to find you. And I did one at a time because I was terrified. I was like, if I come back and it's still there, that's going to kill me.
So,
I want to record for posterity. Hey, authors out there, if you have an arc that you want to give, I will gladly give it a home. I want to read them. Please give them to me. It is not unsolicited. I am soliciting them right now.
And I'll add to that. So for SFWA, Science Fiction Fantasy Writers Association, for 2 years running at the Nebula Conference that they host, and the Nebula Conference will be coming up, I think, right after or right before this episode airs. I think it's the weekend before this episode airs. So sorry we didn't get an extra plug for the Nebula Conference, but at the Nebula Conference for 2024 and 2025, I managed the book bags, and the book bag giveaways for everybody that came to the conference. And as part of that, people were sending us arcs, or publishers would send us copies and stuff. And I will just say this from my experience: literally nobody is ever offended if you give them a book. Like they may just sort of not, they may not like immediately take it and go sit down in a corner and start reading it because they're on their way somewhere. But almost everybody I have ever seen get a free book has been like, I just got a free book. This is awesome.
Yeah. Well, and even me too. I did a
Yeah.
panel at Worldcon, and somebody came up afterward and gave me their book, and I was like, "Oh my God!"
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
It's
so
fantastic.
honored.
Like I the way I described doing like managing the book bag for SIFWA was, it's sort of like being Santa Claus. Like there's nobody can get mad at me, like on all
Right.
sides of the equation. Like authors and publishers are excited about finding readers are excited about finding books. Honestly, it's like it's the most wholesome core of being a writer and a reader is recognizing that everybody likes books. So I would
Yeah.
not, I would not be hesitant to just hand out your arcs in the future.
I have a curiosity in, because we met each other in passing at Worldcon, which was lovely, but I basically don't know you at all. And one of the best ways I love getting to know people, which is why it's the kind of core question that we always ask our guests on this podcast is, what is in your book DNA? Like, what are the stories that you first consumed or had read to you or you read that created the structure of who you are today?
Yeah, so I think I get that question, a lot. Like even my students will ask me like, well, what was the book that like made you want to be a writer? And the funny thing is it wasn't a book.
Yeah.
It was The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time video game when I was 9 years old. I got it for Christmas. I played that game. It absolutely captivated me. And that story, there are times in my life where I wish I could go back and play that game again for the very first time. Have you guys played it? Have you played Ocarina of Time?
It's been a minute.
I am aging myself. My offspring played it.
Okay.
When
No
they
way.
were younger. So when you said you were 9 years old when this came out, I almost crumbled into dust and flew away on the wind. And I adore that because I want to hear more stories from you before I go into my rant about how storytelling in video games is an amazing new medium, and people
Yes.
are I think people have known it for a while, and I think there's so much opportunity for people to understand more of it.
Yeah, and so, I mean, for me, it was the story in the game and the way that it made me feel. So, for those of you who haven't played Ocarina of Time, you start off by, you're kind of conspiring with the princess to stop this bad guy from stealing the Triforce, which I could talk for hours about the Triforce, but I will stop. Basically, that is like the purest source of power, right? If you have all three pieces of the Triforce, you kind of command the power of the gods. You can bend reality to your will. So you're trying to stop him from getting it and destroying the world. And I was playing this so earnestly, and like I was 10, young Link is, or 9 or 10, young Link is 10. And it was like I was him, and like it was in that, okay, I've got to do this thing. I've got to save this really beautiful world. And like this is the 90s, right? So every other video game had been a side scroller, but this had a field and a mountain, and you could explore, and there are things to find, and it was amazing. And then you got it. And I thought in my 10-year-old brain, I was like, I did it. I beat the game. And what you realize is that all of your actions have allowed Ganondorf to get the Triforce for himself. So you set out to do this really noble thing, right? Saving the world, doing the right thing. And in doing so, it leads to its destruction. And you wake up 7 years later in the body of an adult. You're now like 17 years old, and you have to fix what you did when you tried to save the world in the first place. And that, oh God, like little 10-year-old me was mind blown, just devastated me, it had me hook, line, and sinker. And so when I look at Bloodweaver, because I was thinking about that. I was like, well, what is it? What really is the DNA of it? It goes back to some of those thematic elements in Ocarina of Time. The idea of trying to do the right thing, but not always knowing what it is, sometimes to devastating consequences, right? So I have been telling people kind of as I've been on social media and trying to get my book out in the world that my characters are humans, not heroes. You know, they're not going to be always selfless, right? They're going to make selfish choices. They're going to make, Kirik especially, the guy on the front cover, he's going to make really emotionally charged choices that may not always seem like the kind of choices you'd want a hero to make, but he's going to be human and he's always going to have a reason for doing that, you know? And then when you see kind of what the consequences of those actions are, you know, attempting to rectify or to do the right thing or set the course straight. So there's a lot of, I would say, you know, moral conundrums no one's truly equipped to deal with in the Bloodweaver, but they will try, and they'll try earnestly. And so I think that's kind of what I set out to write was this story of humans in these unorthodox, extraordinary circumstances, just really trying to do what they believe is the right thing to do, and kind of explore how that's what it is, right? That's what life is people mostly trying to do the right thing, but occasionally really not having a handle on what the right thing is. And I think I can trace that all the way back to Legend of Zelda. So, yeah.
I love that. About that same time, was most of your story ingestion this game, or were there other books you're reading, movies you were watching, TV shows? Like, what are the other story pieces that happen kind of in constellation with that?
Yeah, so Garth Nix's Sabriel series was one that I read. Yeah, and especially the second book, Lyriel. So the idea of, you know, she wants to be this seer, but she ends up being an Abhorsen and has this power she doesn't want. Also kind of plays into, you know, Mel, my sister, is kind of saddled with a power that she doesn't understand and doesn't want, and she had no choice in obtaining, and so that's kind of, I think, in there too. And yeah, just trying, you know, questions about who gets what power, and if you recognize that you have power, you know, whether that be in fantasy, that's always literal, right? But I think in the real world, that's always something that you have to reckon with too, is, you know, questions of what power do I have, and how do I critically examine, you know, the power that maybe I was given by circumstances outside of my own control, you know, by an accident of my birth. How do I wield that wisely, and how do I make the best choices? Whose voices do I listen to? Who, you know, how do I operate in this massively complex world? So I wanted to try to capture that in a book, because it was always the books that made me question those things and deal with some hard realities that kind of stuck with me the most. So yeah, I would definitely say Garth Nix was a huge one. And then, you know, I was a child of the 90s and a teen of the 2000s, you know, so I read a lot of the books that were really popular in that time. You know, The Hunger Games was another one, standing up, you know, for what is right in, you know, in times of oppression and all that stuff. So I think there's a little bit of that in there, even though that's not really a fantasy. Yeah.
Were you drawn to fantasy at a young age, or was that something that kind of came in a little bit later, like 9 or 10?
Yeah, I remember going through this like phase where I was like, I'm not gonna be a nerd. I like fantasy, but I'm not gonna go deep into it. And then like Legend of Zelda hit, and then I started reading more, and yeah, I was never gonna get out of this world alive without being an entire nerd. So yeah, I really kind of embraced fantasy from a young age, and I would constantly tell people, like, it's not just magic and dragons. It's not just make believe. Like, fantasy examines the real world through allegory, and isn't that cool, and then I got to college and they're like, well, fantasy's for kids, and I'm like, haven't you read Lord of the Rings, right? You read, I mean, like the Dragon Riders of Pern. You've read these things, right? Ursula K. Le Guin, Anne McCaffrey, like. And finally, I found a professor who had, and he was like, "Yes," and I was like, "You are my person." And
So were you studying English lit or something like that in college?
yeah, I thought I wanted to go into visual arts. So
Okay.
I had this idea of kind of being a visual artist and a storyteller through a visual medium, and I liked that idea. But then I still love to draw, but the thing that changed was that the more I started doing drawing kind of professionally, it lost its spark, whereas writing is kind of never did. And so drawing is now the thing that I kind of do for myself on the back end. It's a way for me to kind of explore my world before I put it on the page. But yeah, once I met, my former college professor who was amazing and also a nerd like me. And then there's another one who got me really into Shakespeare. So like, there's a ton of Shakespeare Easter eggs in the Blood Weaver. Um, some more well hidden than others, I think. I'm waiting for somebody to come along and be like, wait a second, is that Macbeth in there? And I'm like, yeah, that's that. But yeah, I got pulled back into literature pretty hard, and so double majored in English and creative writing with an art minor.
It is interesting how a lot of us that ended up writing science fiction and fantasy books had an experience where maybe we started out loving science fiction and fantasy when we were younger, and then we had college professors that were like, well, that's not real, or that's not legitimate art. And
Right.
then if we were lucky, we had those professors that kind of came in and said, no, we can see it. I remember having a professor in the English department when I was a student that I ran into many years later at a comic book convention of all places. I was at Emerald City Comic Con. I believe it. Yeah, it was one of the big comic conventions. I'm pretty sure it was Emerald City. And what was funny is that he was hanging out with a relatively famous comic book creator, and I knew who the comic book creator was, but I walk over to the two of them, and the comic creator thinks that I'm there to be like gushing at them about their comic book work. And yes, but also like I was like, I love your work, but, and then I like pivot over to my professor, and I immediately start talking to my professor from college, because he was that professor for me
Yeah.
who specifically like brought in like out of the ordinary or unorthodox or more pop culture material into his curriculum, and kind of broadened the scope of what we would consider, like the canon of English
Right.
literature. I remember we read in one of his classes, we would read like King Lear, and then after that we read a Stephen King book, and I can't remember what Stephen King book it was, but I remember like there was Lear, and then Stephen King, and then we did Flannery O'Connor, and then we did like, I think there was like a Japanese horror movie, and it was just sort of like a whole fascinating. His perspective of it was very broad, and my hope would be for future English professors of the world to be that cool professor that brings in the material from outside of the Norton anthologies into the class.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, yeah, mine, it would be like, well, you've read Neuromancer, right? And I'm like 20 and I'm like, no. So it's like, okay, you got to read Neuromancer. You've got to read. I mean, he gave me so many authors I discovered through him. Octavia Butler, like Kindred, I read, I even got, like, I'd read, and I knew like Slaughterhouse-Five, but
Right.
he really kind of opened up some of Vonnegut's lesser known works to me, and you've got just gave me a smorgasbord of things to read and to look at, like, where where is, what happens at the intersection of fantasy and literature, and how that happens more often than we think. That I think fantasy really does lend itself to discussing like hard questions, and maybe it is the spoonful of sugar that makes the medicine go down, but what's wrong, with a little bit of that if it's helping the medicine go down?
I mean, Shakespeare wasn't exactly not trying to please the crowd, right? Like we're
Right.
talking
He
about.
literally was a shill in the best
Yeah.
way. Like,
I'm constantly telling my students this when I teach Shakespeare. I'm like, look, he had to impress the kings and the people with the money, but then also the people who just needed something to do
Yeah.
in the middle of the day, because there's no TV, there's no internet, there's no, you've got to distract yourself from the plague in some way. And if the theaters are open, right? So he's got fart jokes, he's got, rude humor. And my students, sometimes they're like, oh, I get it. And then sometimes they're like, but it's still Shakespeare. It's still language that's tough. And I'm like, it is, but it's beautiful.
I'm so happy that you brought up Dragon Riders of Pern, because that is one of my, like, Heart series. Harper Hall is one of my core book DNAs. They're like right up there on the shelf.
Oh my God.
And one of the things I find so fascinating is people always think of them as fantasy because they have dragons on the cover, and it's totally science fiction. I will go. I will talk about the hexapodal species on this planet. And what made
If you're playing our bingo game, this is an opportunity to stamp your Celia corrects people about whether or not the Dragon Riders of Pern is fantasy or not. Just chunk, you've got a square now.
I love that CN brought it up first, though. And the reason I'm bringing it up is there is another science fictional series that, because of the cover and the content, most people think of as fantasy, which is C.S. Friedman's The Black Sun Rising is the first book. And I'm very early in the Bloodweaver book, and like it's already giving vibes of, not that it's science fictional, but that like dark fantasy, the inheritance of a power you don't quite understand, like potentially dubious moral choices I can see on the horizon. And that's one of the things I really love about C.S. Friedman's Cold Fire trilogy, is that it really grapples with those elements in a really interesting way. When you had mentioned that these are not heroes, they're humans, and therefore they're going to make choices that are not just driven by the plot, but about like their feelings and things that are going on in their life and their motivations. What drew you to that more complexity in writing these characters?
Yeah, I think it's because there is part of me that loves literature, like, and I hate to be like capital L literature, but literature that examines humans, right? And what it means to be human. So, one that I just recently read, I didn't want to see the movie until I read Hamnet. And I was reading it, and somebody asked me, like, well, how is it? And I was like, it reads almost like a character study of Agnes, who is Shakespeare's wife. And I loved that she actually never called William Shakespeare by name. He was always the husband, because historically, right, it's never been Agnes Hathaway or Anne Hathaway. It's usually Shakespeare's wife. And then when you say Anne Hathaway, everyone's like, oh yeah, the actress. And I'm like, no, not the actress. But it really does, it read like a character study. And so I love reading about complex characters that frustrate me and challenge me, because I think, so in education, we talk about literature as always being either a door, a mirror, or a window, right? And a window allows you to, peer into the life of somebody else. A door invites you to experience it, but a mirror just simply reflects who you are. And I love books that are mirrors to me, right? I think those are really important. But I always tell my students, if you're only ever reading books that reflect who you are, right, your idealized version of yourself, you're a narcissist, right? You're not taking those opportunities to put yourself in another mind or examine, the reality of maybe what it means to be you, the challenging aspects of what it means to be you. And so, I don't view my characters as self-inserts, but in the few moments where I've maybe borrowed from myself, it's been like, hey, you've had times when you've been impulsive. What was that like? And if that's this thing that this character needs to get through, right? So I would say Kirik's largest flaw at the beginning of the book is that he tends to be emotionally driven and impulsive, right? And he needs his lesson that he either will or will not learn, I'm not going to spoil the end, is to overcome that tendency toward impulse, even if he feels that impulse is justified, right? And so why not explore that, right? Because humans are impulsive, and challenge the reader to ask themselves, if I was in this situation, would I actually do anything differently? Even though it's frustrating to see him, maybe act too quickly or not choose the better, more morally upright path, right? Because the consequences is the thing he fears the most, right? If we are faced with our greatest fear, would we actually be the hero that we want to be? And I think the answer is not always, but maybe in learning the lesson that presents us with it gets us there, it gets us closer to being that person. So I was interested in that, and I would hope that if my characters act as mirrors, it's one of those mirrors that makes us go, ooh, I could learn something from this guy's horrible mistake, or like, hey, he's really, if he's frustrating, or if there's something that he does that the reader's like, ooh, I'm frustrated, but let's see if that'll change, or I wonder if that'll grow, or am I frustrated because that's a trait that I recognize in myself too, which is sometimes I think reading can allow us to have hard conversations, not just about the exterior world that we live in, but the interior world with ourselves. I've definitely encountered characters where I've been like, I'm frustrated by that person, but I think I do that too,
Yeah, that thing where sometimes the thing that you dislike in others is the thing that you find frustrating in yourself.
Right. Well, and I think like Lyriel and Garth Nix is a really good. I remember being really frustrated with her because I was like, embrace your magic, embrace your power, and then I was this, like preteen girl that was not willing to embrace a lot of things about myself, right? So I think sometimes that's the key, right? Like, why did I love Lyriel so much in the end? Because she taught me some things about who I wanted to be versus maybe who I was. So,
well, and that can happen anytime. I've been watching Deadloch, which is this Australian or Tasmanian murder mystery series. And there's a character that multiple times on the couch I look over at my spouse and I'm like, oh, I don't like this character at all. She's so irritating, and I don't love that I see so many of my own traits in her. Like, it was just such a, unpacking of my own discomfort of, oh, that's definitely something I've said out loud. Right. Well,
yeah. So I definitely think there's a lot of places for books to do that. And actually, so one that I read recently, A Song of Legends Lost by M.H. Ayenda. I keep singing her praises, and she blurbed me, actually. The author blurbed The Bloodweaver, which I'm so excited to. I think probably by the time this comes out, I will have done the reveal and all that. But I'm sure this woman's like, okay, calm down. But I love that book so much because there were characters of all walks of life, and there were ones who were really frustrating, and some who immediately I was like, I like you, I will follow you to the ends of the earth, and all of those. And then the way that she kind of masterfully changed those things by the end, some of the characters I found myself gravitating toward at the beginning, at the end I was like, ooh, and then vice versa. I just thought they were so wonderfully complex and the world was so rich that
literal character development.
Yes, yeah. So this is my character development gesture. I don't don't know why I keep doing that, but I talk with my hands. So
I got it. I got it.
But yeah, I highly recommend Song of Legends Lost as a recent read. Its sequel just came out in the UK, and I have to sit patiently for like 3 more months until it comes out here. But yeah.
Do you have other stories with that either are a mirror that you really appreciated, or were a door that was like, ooh, I want to experience something that is so different than my own experience. I'm going towards this other thing.
Yeah, I feel like, oh gosh, Octavia Butler was a big kind of a door or a window. Oh my good Lord. Like, Kindred changed my life. I read her again in grad school. There was Lilith's Brood was one that like there was a point where I actually set the first one down for a second because I was like, oh, I am so frustrated by these aliens thinking they know everything about humanity and what's right for it, and oh, that's what she's commenting on, isn't it? Right? She's talking about colonization, right?
I did assign. Well, when I was growing up, they were called Xenogenesis, but I assigned the first book of this to Eric because he'd never read it. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So many good ones. Even another one that I read recently where it was Serapio and his kind of whole arc in the I'm blanking on the name of the trilogy, but the first book is Rebecca Roanhorse, Black Sun. Like rooting for him to destroy the world, even though like because of like the justification, and then realizing the horror of what he's done, and God, the world building in that was so fascinating. I'd never read a fantasy in that setting, and there's been and it made me reach out to like what are some other like non-Western set fantasies that I could be reading, and so it kind of pivoted my focus for a long time after I'd read Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, and I'm gonna kick myself that I don't remember the series title.
Did you read the fifth season trilogy?
Yes. Yes.
If someone likes the Black Sun, I always recommend the fifth season and vice versa, because I feel like they're so good at this amazing detailed structure of world building that is not white Western focused.
Yes, N.K. Jemisin is like I have this shelf in my house that's like books that have fundamentally changed my life, and Broken Earth is on that shelf. So
I want you to send me a picture of that bookshelf, please.
Oh, yeah.
That would like delight me to no end.
It's got I will. It's got all sorts of like there's fantasy on there, but then there's also like just books of all
I love it.
of all walks of life. I've got some nonfiction on there. It's just those books where it's like you're gonna put this here because you're gonna read it again and you're going to need to find it. So yeah, I'll send you a picture.
Thank you.
So what are some non-fantasy or some of those nonfiction or maybe literature?
Ooh, so The Snow Leopard by Peter Matheson was one that I read, and maybe it just kind of hit me at the right point in my life. I had just kind of switched settings. I'd moved from where I grew up out to where I am located now, Colorado, and so it's about a man who accompanies his friend who's doing research on the doll sheep in the Himalayas. And Peter Matheson was a Zen Buddhist. He wrote a lot about Zen Buddhism, and so he goes hoping to find the snow leopard. And he chronicles the trip that they took in the format's like a journal. And the entire time, he's expressing a lot of this frustration because the snow leopard is an incredibly rare animal. It's hard to find. You could be within 10 feet of one and not see it because of the way its spots blend in with the tundra and the Himalayas. And there's this moment in this book that really stuck out to me where he's talking to a monk at the Crystal Monastery, and the monk is talking about, well, I didn't have a choice. I was assigned this monastery, this is my life. And he's asked him, well, isn't that frustrating? He said, no, I'm happy because I didn't have a choice. And Peter reflects he hasn't seen, and I'm not going to tell you whether or not he does, but at this point in the book, he hadn't seen the snow leopard. And he's kind of criticizing this guy's perspective of oh, well, what happens when I go home and people say, have you seen the snow leopard? And my answer is no. Am I supposed to say, isn't that wonderful? And that got me, that line, isn't that wonderful, of the acceptance of the way things are, or the beauty in the disappointment, or in the, you travel halfway around the world hoping to see something, and maybe you do, maybe you don't. Isn't that wonderful? And I've found actually myself, as I've been going through my debut journey, just trying to use that kind of phrase, right? Of you set out to write a book and you toiled for years and you did it. Isn't that wonderful, right? And then reviews start pouring in and you get the positive ones. Isn't that wonderful? And then someone's like, this is the worst thing I've ever read in my entire life. Isn't that wonderful? That you still read it anyway, and that I get to put something out there, even though, I don't read my reviews, but I've slipped up. I'm human. There's been a few times where I've been like, what's going on? I'm very fortunate. It's been mostly positive, but isn't it wonderful that someone somewhere gave it 2 stars? That's actually, it is wonderful. Isn't that the whole point? Is you put something in the world, you hope somebody finds it, and people will, and whatever way that works, isn't it wonderful that you did it? So that book, some of the philosophy in that book of just accepting what is, and finding the beauty in the chaos has been super helpful to me. So that's another one that's on there. A horror novel, House of Leaves, is on there as well. I don't know.
Is that a horror novel?
I think those are the scariest books I've ever read in my life. I
haven't read it because there's so much conversation about it. Am I remembering correctly that this is the book that's the format of the book is very it plays a lot with various pages and
yes.
The structure of it.
Yeah.
I've heard of it. I've not heard of it referred to as a horror novel, but now I'm interested more.
Yes, I 100% I think it is horror. So the premise is this guy finds a manuscript that another man has poured his life over, and so it's like a manuscript within a manuscript within a manuscript. And the core manuscript is by a man named, I think it's Navidson is his last name, and he finds a house, and the interior dimensions of the house are larger than the exterior dimensions of the house. So there's this kind of documentary at the center, and then a man interpreting the documentary and slowly losing his mind, and then the narrator interpreting the interpreted documentary and slowly losing his mind, and then you, the reader, slowly losing your mind, and it was, I lost sleep over that book. So yeah, I think that might be one of the scariest things that I've ever read. What else is? I'm trying to think what else is on that shelf. Pure Nessie is on there.
Yeah, I love that one. That's
Pure Nessie is on there. Gosh, complete works of Shakespeare. There's a lot of things on that shelf. Yeah. So
I do. So do you do a lot of rereads of those books? Like you mentioned that they're there for going back to revisit. So do you have any sort of a schedule, or do you just sort of what, I've been thinking about it, I need to go back and reread this?
Yeah, it's sometimes I don't do it on a schedule, but it's just kind of they're there when I need them, or when the spirit moves me. Okay. And or when I feel inclined. And so sometimes I'll go back because some of them are there just because I had fun with them, or I love the way they were plotted. One that's on there's A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. that was a book that I read and I had such a great time with. It kind of got me out of I'd been in a funk for a while. I was 2019. Was in my 30s now, and it was like, wow, you still haven't done this whole author thing, and you've kind of not been reading fantasy again, and so I read it. I just picked it up on the shelf, and I was like, this sounds good, and I read it, and by the end of it, I was like, I'm gonna start writing again. I need to start writing fantasy again.
It relit it for you.
Yeah, I was like, I need to start writing fantasy. I need to start reading fantasy again. And I literally the next day, like, remember, I put the book on the shelf and I was like, hey, love you, my husband, hey, I love you. I'm going to go write. And I started drafting Bloodweaver. So that was
wow.
Like the direct line.
Yeah. So there's like, yeah, that was the moment where I was like, you just do the thing, just go do the thing and write. And I'd had this story, I'd had the magic in my head for a while at that point, and Kirik kind of buzzing around, being like, pay attention to me, I have a story for you, write this down. And so finally I was like, okay, I'm gonna go write the story, I guess. So the rest is history.
It's the plots are very different, but yes. Tonally, I feel like a lot of V.E. Schwab's work reminds me of Erin Morgenstern's The Night Circus. Have you read that one?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I read that, I read that when I lived in Germany for a year. It was one of the only English books that I could find. I was reading a lot of German books at that time, but I was reading more like young adult and or like, my language was I'm better than it is now, but not to the point where I was like, I'm going to go read like a hard, difficult adult book. So I was reading a lot of like YA in German, and but Erin Morgenstern's The Night Circus was one of the few like speculative titles on their English list at the bookstore, most local to where I lived. So I read that when I was there, and I loved it. It was great.
I could see similarities, between Erin Morgenstern and V.E. Schwab. I haven't read that much V.E. Schwab. I think I've only read one or two. But I can definitely see like there is like a vibe, maybe.
Yeah,
it's the vibe. I was thinking vibe too. Yeah.
Linguistic vibe. Yeah. The way I would say like the prose and the way the information's presented, and and I love both their styles. So.
Oh gosh, yeah, they're great.
So I think I either missed the title, but what was the V.E. Schwab book specifically that you were reading?
A Darker Shade of Magic.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm not familiar with that one. But
it's real good, Eric.
Good.
So some of what we do on this show is that we have guests on and we get books that inspired them, and Celia makes a list. And then because my reading of fantasy and science fiction skips a lot of stuff from the 20th century, I just didn't read as much science fiction and fantasy that was released there, and even sometimes into the 21st. I just wasn't. I didn't start writing science fiction and fantasy and kind of revisiting my joy of science fiction and fantasy till about 10 or so years ago, because I had that experience of going to college and having that, like, you will not read the light and fluffy stuff, and then it's like, man,
right.
I've read science fiction and fantasy that is nowhere near light and fluffy,
No. And I would say like that's not Bloodweaver is not light and fluffy.
Fair warning.
Fair warning. I mean, I like, and if readers need like content warnings or anything like that, I don't think it's not grimdark either, but it's not like. I'm not a light. I guess when I write, I'm not light and fluffy.
I mean, a central plot premise is the persecution of a whole class of people. So, guys, we're solid dark fantasy.
Right. And I was hoping, it was like, I think the name Bloodweaver is maybe clues in on like, hey, there's some darker elements here. And like mild body horror and like, and Yeah, so that would be my hope, is that like if you pick up Blood Weaver and you're like, this looks like a lighthearted romp, then I don't know if that's going to be quite the lighthearted romp.
Genre
But
definitions, and like specifically like when you get into like the subgenre stuff, can be such an interesting journey, because
yeah,
it sounds like some of the ways that you're defining this book is it's by what it's not, and because it is not, it is also not romantasy, right? Like
right.
you're not writing romantasy, which is very popular right now. You're not writing grimdark. This is not a YA story. So like in some ways you're setting expectations by both what it is and what it's not, and I think that's like a fascinating process when you're a writer or a reader, to go through like the list and be like, is it this? No. Okay, well, is it this then? It's like a whole diagram
Yeah.
of.
Well, and maybe Eric, you've had this experience too, because I mean, like, my agent, when we were having conversations about how do we pitch this, how do we, where do we want to position it, who do we want to use comp titles as? It was like my whole brain went blank. Like, I had a moment. I remember sitting one time being like, have I read anything ever in my life? Have I ever watched a movie, or like, what have I done? Because and actually that was the thing, is sometimes it became a lot easier for me to get my bearings by describing to myself, well, what do I know I didn't do, right?
Yeah.
What did I not do? And I didn't do romantasy, and I didn't want to do I didn't want to go so dark it was grim dark, and I knew I wanted to do epic fantasy, darker, more adult themes, but still have some space in there for maybe, I don't want to say like younger audiences, but slightly crossover. I think someone I was talking to once was like, I would place this 16 plus, so not quite YA, but there may be some teens who would get something out of it. And then one that I remember watching recently where I was like, okay, vibes no, but thematically yes, was Arcane, League of Legends.
Oh, that's such a good show.
Yes, I loved that show. And I was watching it, and I had a moment there where I was like, okay, so they have this magic that people are still figuring out. It's ill-defined. They're figuring out how it's good, and they are figuring out how it's bad, right? And bad things are happening. And then there's a sibling narrative at its heart, right, between Vi and Jinx. And there's a society that is oppressed. And I was sitting there and I was like, with the exception, because again, like Bloodweaver doesn't have guns, there's no like steampunk, that's, and they've kind of got a techie sort of sci-fi vibe. And but I was like, thematically, there's so much that Bloodweaver is in conversation with Arcane. So I kept trying. I was like, can we Arcane League of Legends? Can we do Arcane League of Legends? And I've gotten that through on a few things. Like a few places have Arcane as a comp, but I love Arcane as a comp. Just don't like go in expecting like the aesthetic.
Steampunk and some
Not
cool
steampunk.
gunfighting. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love the soundtrack, which makes me want to
Yes.
listen to the soundtrack while I'm reading this arc.
Yeah, you could. I wrote I wrote it to a lot of like grungy stuff. And yeah, my playlists are I learned so embarrassing. My music aesthetic has been branded by Gen Z as sad dad rock. So Bloodweaver was written to a background of sad dad rock.
I love that. I love that for you, and I love that for the book. So because this is one of those writer process conversations that comes up for me. I've been in this conversation a million times, but when writers write to music,
Yes.
and do they write to music that has lyrics or doesn't have lyrics? It sounds like you're in the music with lyrics category, or.
Yeah, music with lyrics. I mean, I have a few things on my playlist that don't have lyrics, or lyrics in another language, but like Sigurros is one that I pull up. It's like when I gotta get in the feels, I'm like, I'm gonna pull up, Talk, the album especially is or I think it's Star Alfor is one that I'll get into, or like sometimes I'll bust out like my German industrial metal. And again, I'm like, I'm the fluffiest, bubbliest person, and I have.
Oh,
German
that's
and
my. I am coming to realize, given how much we talk about horror on this podcast, which is another of Eric's plots that I'll let him reveal to you, is that the sweetest people I've ever met love or write or somehow embrace horror in a way that you're like, those are dark depths, and they're just super cheerful about it.
Yeah. Well, I think you do, right? That's what you have to have an outlet for it somewhere, right? Like when you recognize, or you have the things that are scary in your life that you want to think about, you've got to have a safe space for that. And I think writing has long been a safe space for me to kind of grapple with some of the thoughts or the questions that I have about the world, and questions that never have ever seemed to have easy answers. It's like, well, I can't quantify it in my life, or I can't find the best solution, and maybe the book is where, the writing is where I ask those questions and I play with those things, and I hopefully find some sort of catharsis in it. But yeah, lots of grunge music, sad dad rock. Yeah. And then some that like make no sense. And I'm like, why is it that I equate this song with this character?
So are you like a build a playlist for the book that you're working on kind of writer?
Yeah, and I tend to just kind of go through and like, I'm like, if the vibes are vibing, I'll go. Like if it's Mumford and Sons today, I guess we're writing to Mumford and Sons. Like I've one character that for whatever reason, whenever those banjos start going on, I'm like, oh, Emil, welcome. Like you're here right now, or Florence and the Machine.
Oh
a
God,
lot.
Florence. Oh. I mean, talk about storytelling, man. Whew.
Yeah. And that's the thing, or like I love music that has story in the songs. So the Decemberists are another big one for me. There's a band that does not get enough love called Shearwater, and I love them so much. The singer's actually an author too. He writes a lot of nonfiction works about birds. He wrote a book called The Most Remarkable Creature, and it just examines the striated caracara for like 400 pages. It's a wonderful read. Highly recommend. And then go listen to Shearwater. That's one person. I would love to send Jonathan Myberg, the lead singer of Shearwater, a copy of my book, apropos of nothing, and be like,
Jonathan, please let us know. We'll send you a copy.
Like, I know you sing about birds a lot. There's a lot of bird imagery in my book. They're metaphors. Don't know if you like fantasy, because that's how I found the Snow Leopard. He has a song called The Snow Leopard, and I was listening to it, and I was like, this is an amazing song. And then I Googled it, and he had done an interview where he talked about grappling with some of the messages in The Snow Leopard, and I was like, well, I gotta go read that book now, and I did, and then now I'm grappling with those same things, and the world goes round. So yeah, Jonathan Myberg, please notice me. I don't know if you like fantasy, but yeah, listen to his music, read his books.
You talked about your hard copy bookshelf, which I really appreciate that you put your books on bookshelves. That's very important to me. That was a targeted message at Eric.
To say somebody a pile person.
He has told me he has at least one bookshelf.
I have several bookshelves, and I have many more piles.
And given that, like, do you find that you gravitate more to that, like, physical copy of the book? Do you also read via ebook or audiobook at all?
Yeah. So I do love a good physical copy. I'm a huge fan of paperbacks, and I know that,
I feel like
there's
they're
been
gone.
I love a good floppy trade paperback because I can sit it kind of in between my legs and it just lays open and I mean like hardcovers are wonderful and especially if I love a book, I will seek out a special edition or a hardcover kind of, you know, aesthetic copy, but I definitely I tend to gravitate toward paperbacks. And I have an e-reader. I take that on vacation. You know, that's kind of my I it's easier to pack an e-reader than like 5 books that I want to read on vacation. So and then yeah, I've been listening to audiobooks a lot more now. And I think that's by virtue of being published with Podium because you know, I was a casual audiobook listener and I usually would listen to like nonfiction or like historical, you know, classics that were, you know, easily attainable. But yeah, because of Podium, I've been listening to a lot more audiobooks. I recently listened to Station Eleven's audiobook, which, oh God, talk about gorgeous prose, right? Like intersection of literature and then kind of sci-fi, but man, what an amazing work. And listening to it through audiobook was, I think, the way to go because that prose demands to be read aloud. There, it's very poetic. Did I break up?
No.
No. I it looked like Eric was going to say something, so I was trying to be quiet to let him this time because I've been. we coming after your episode airs, we interviewed an audiobook narrator, and I agree with you that like once you get into a publishing situation where you know your book is going to be an audiobook and it starts to be like a different scenario, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
this is real now.
I'm so excited about my audiobook. Like,
I saw that you did the announcement on that. It looks like you've got like dual narrators for the different point of view characters.
So that was something that I never like. So much of Podium has been like, hey, it would be kind of cool to do this, you know, and then Podium's been like, yeah, it would, and I'm like, you know, so like my cover artist is Eleanor Pietera. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, but she's a Portuguese artist, and she's done, I mean, like she's done covers for like V.E. Schwab and Lee Bardugo and Veronica Roth, and then like me for some reason, you know, and I brought I brought her to Podium's attention because I was like, I love her aesthetic. It's like Art Deco Nouveau, but fantasy, and that's kind of in my brain where I would like Bloodweaver to be. And they're like, cool. And then like 2 weeks later, they're like, we signed her, and I was like, I literally like almost fell. I got that email as I was like walking out of the building, tripped, dropped my phone, and was like, you know. Like almost died. And it was the same thing with my audiobook. I had listened to some samples, and Anthony Palmini was the guy whose voice kind of stuck out to me. I was like, he's got like depth, right? Like he can do all sorts of different ranges, and I was like, I just really think his voice is fantastic, you know, and also sexy. Like, let's put it out there, a little sexy. And so I was like, he would be really cool, you know, for Keurig. And I did not expect, I was like, somebody with the vocal range of Anthony Palmini, and they're like, here's Anthony Palmini. And then I did the same thing. I was like, I really like Sabrina Morvillo's like her voice, like she's, you know, she's got that confidence and, you know, kind of commanding Mel sound to me. And they're like, here you go. And it was just like, dang, guys, you know, thank you. So I've just been having a blast with them as my publisher. It's been so much fun to like feel like I have a say and watch it come to life. It's been so much fun.
For all of the stress, and I'm going to say this as a debut author that's, again, following CN, but like for all of the stress and the worry and the anxiety of being a debut author, there are all of these wonderful, I'm going to use wonderful because I think that's appropriate and it connects back to what you're saying. There are these moments that you go like, oh shit, like my book's going to be on a bookshelf at such and such, or like, oh shit, I got the artist that like you see a cover and it just makes it real.
Yeah.
So it is like I was very cognizant of that as I've been going through this process, and one of my intentions is to express that to people, rather, because it's easy to just be like, it's fun, you know, got a book coming out, whatever. But like, I'm like, no, this is cool, guys. Like, I've got a book coming out, and the cover's going to be awesome. As soon as I can announce it, I don't know when I can share it, but like, as soon as I can share this cover, it's cool. As soon as I can share who the audiobook narrator is, trust me, it's super cool. And so like, Celia has made this comment before about like us having authors or certain conversations about having no chill. I actually think it's appropriate for us authors, particularly, to have less chill about it. Like to be a little bit less like, it's fun, I'm gonna have a book coming out. It's like, no, this is cool. Like, this is a book I wrote. People are gonna be able to read it. You know, like, yeah, no, it's exciting.
I'm like,
chill is overrated. Everyone get hyped, be excited, love the things you love.
Right. Embrace the cringe. Like, because it's...
When I heard that cringe or pick me was like a diss in like there's, once again, no more time I feel more old than when language of the youth has made an insult over something. Like, I think, like, why would you say pick me is bad? You're trying. Why would you say cringe? Like, you guys, trying your best is a good thing. What's happening?
Right. Being earnestly in love with something, right? And just like the earnestness that comes with loving something, right? And you know, if you love to write, if you love to draw, if you love, I don't care, football, or if you're a fan of something, embrace it for the love of God. Like, we just I don't think we have, like, that's what makes it beautiful, right? That's what makes it worth doing. That's
life
what makes
is too short to not love things.
Right. Be cringe, because we all know where we're going at the end, you know, and I would so much rather, I mean, and it's so funny too, how like, just the difference of, you know, like a few years ago, you'd be like, oh, well, yeah, I like to write fantasy. I'm a nerd. And people are like, oh, yeah, well, whatever. And now it's like, I wrote fantasy, and I have a book coming out, and all of a sudden it's like, well, you're successful. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I've been unsuccessful for so many years, right? Like, I'm successful once, you know, like, and that's, you know, like, but the rest of it was just me being me and human, and taking the chance to embrace that, which was equal parts terrifying, but I'm so glad that I did it. Because, like, Eric, as a writer, you know, I oscillate between like, people are gonna read this, and like,
oh yeah,
people are gonna read this, you know, I'm like, oh my god, what did I do? Like, it's every day, but isn't it wonderful, you know?
The simultaneous joy and terror of being perceived.
Right, of being a debut author. Yeah, it's like, on one hand, like, I feel like I'm on stage, which I've always loved being, you know, like, I do like getting up, and I'm a teacher, you know, I like getting up and talking about the things that love me, but then it's like you're peering out into the darkness, and who's looking back, you know? It's, oh gosh, I've stared into the void. And now the void is staring back at me. So yeah, it's a really unique, fantastic experience, and yeah, it's been a fun ride. So yeah.
There is something that I found on your website, and I realize I'm not prepared, so I'm going to grab something and be right back. This is such good podcasting, you guys.
So we'll just we'll have like some music in the background, I guess.
Little intermission band go across the.
So one of the things that being in an audio medium, although this is on YouTube as well for people that want to see me gesticulate, I have a lot of things I love. And when I love something, I love it all the way, and I get many of them. My spouse may call them my dragon hoard. And you mentioned that you love fountain pens.
I do. I was
And
wondering. I
you're
was like,
not at home, so
I have. Oh no no no!
Oh,
Wait,
you have
no.
one? Okay,
The
good,
travel,
good, good,
the
good.
travel fountain pen collection. Oh,
Oh my God, I
ooh.
am lusting over that little. So for those on audio only, she has a travel leather case with multiple fountain pens, and I weirdly started salivating. Don't eat fountain pens, kids. But the hunger for it. So I'm gonna hold this up to the camera, and I would love for you, Cien, to describe what you see, because this is my collection.
Oh my gosh. I see a lot of fountain pens. Okay, so I see some in there that I recognize, actually. So I see okay, I need to count. Was that 9 each row of fountain pens? I see, okay, the one in the middle here, the kind of rainbow looking one, up on the top. Is that is that a Twisby or is that a which one is that? Because the one,
So now I have to get my reading glasses because I'm so blind. Um, there's the middle are there's a couple different Conklins, and then there is
yeah,
a
several Conklins.
yeah, and then there's a Kaweko, which is the small travel one.
Yeah,
So,
I have a my Kavekos are at my house and my I have a few at my in my office at work.
yeah, and then there's a couple Monteverdes, and then
That was
some
the rainbow one on the one of the rainbow ones on the side. It's a Monteverde.
yeah, that one. And
Yes,
then
that
down here the Bennu, where it's got the embedded resin.
yes. I have not bought any Benus, but I look at them and I'm like, should I buy that Benu? Because
I
they're
like it
beautiful.
for the iridescence to weight ratio. They're much lighter because they're resin instead of metal. But
Yeah.
sometimes I want the weight of the pen. I just had to teach myself to not clutch it so hard so my hand wouldn't get tired with it. But the fountain pens allowed me to be like, wait, you can have rainbows on your pen, and then you
Pen.
can have rainbows in your pen. You can get iridescent glitter ink.
Yes.
Obviously, I needed to get them immediately.
Have you seen the Twisbys with the rainbow nib?
Shut up.
It's the Twisby Iris. Yeah, the Twisby Iris is the one. So yeah, so mine are. There's a lot of sailors in here because I really like Japanese fountain pens, and then there's a couple.
They're so streamlined. I haven't bitten the bullet because I'm like, that's too simple for me. I want ornate.
Yeah, I have a few. This is a platinum. I have a couple platinums, but these are so. I have this thing for Japanese fountain pens. And I love, they've been doing a bunch of special editions. Okay, one of my favorites is, so this is a sailor that was released by, it's a Kyo no Oto fountain pen. And it's got I don't know if you guys can see it, but it has a bird on the nib. And this is my, I want to sign books with this pen sometime. I bought this way before I ever was anywhere near being a published author, and I was like, if it happens, this is the pen
So amazing.
that I want to sign books with. So I get to sign books.
I'm so excited that you just had that satchel ready to go. Your
And
love
I
is
just
true.
I love them. I carry them with me, and this is so. What I will do is I tend to kind of do. So there's a program called the Artist's Way, and one of the things in the the philosophy that really worked for me was this idea of morning pages of just I'm gonna write and get my thoughts out of my head, and I'm going to be no one's going to read it but me. So and it's always longhand. And I do that before I start drafting. So I have the pre-draft and then the rough draft. And so what I'll do is I'll go to a coffee shop and I'll write out whatever it is on my head in my head that I kind of plan to write that day, or problems or things that I'm frustrated with. Like, I need to finish a Kirik chapter, but he's not talking to me. Like, why isn't he? I can't access him in my brain today. I think I've made my characters mad, or like, yeah, just processing stuff. And so I have notebooks where I do that longhand and then have like outlines or like doodles. And
wait, do you have a preferred notebook brand?
Yeah, I do.
Tell me.
Okay, here's the problem. They went out of print. So I loved Tomoe River paper, and they would make these Tomoe River notebooks. I have a stash of...
You stocked up.
I bought like these things, and I am not like made of money, so it was like, well, I could eat well this week, or I could buy some more Tomoe paper and just have a lot of noodles. And it was like, guess we're gonna have a lot of noodles. But yeah, Tomoe River, and I don't think I've got, do I have my notebook with me today? Yeah, oh yeah, I do. Of course I do. Yeah, they were these. I love these so much. They were bought, the paper was bought, and I haven't tried the new paper yet because I have a stash of shrink-wrapped old paper that I will write on until I can't anymore. But
and is it dot grid or lines?
It's dot gridded. Yeah.
That is the correct. That is the way.
Yeah, it really is the way. But I love Tomoe River paper. But there's a lot of other really good like
I need to hunt down
Midori paper.
Okay.
Midori. I may have based the name of the hometown that they're from off of the Midori. So they're from this town called Minori, which is the same spelling as that paper, but I just replaced the D. I like to hide little things like that in there, so...
all the Easter eggs of it all?
Yeah, like there's a character in there who is mentioned, he's on the page like maybe for 2 seconds, and it's Kaisen, but he's named after a wine that I like, and he's a winemaker, so that was,
oh,
like
that's so
just
cute.
Little Easter eggs. Yeah. There's a lot of that in there. So I've defaulted to Leuchtturm
just because of the size and ease of accessing and stuff, but I feel like somehow the paper quality varies, and sometimes it's great with fountain pens and sometimes it's not. So I am excited about your paper recommendation. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, if you need anything, let me know.
Smash cut to like a robust fountain pen paper discussion between Cian and Celia on text.
Welcome to our offshoot podcast. Where we just talk about pens and paper.
Yeah, it's on writing, but actually it's nothing to do with, it's the mechanism of the paper and pens themselves.
Yeah.
Sorry, Eric. Now back to our actual podcast about.
No, I mean it is funny to me that when we go off on our little tangents, it'll be me with my little Star Trek sub podcast, and you with the fountain pen sub podcast. So this is part of the process, folks, as you get to know our passions. Like we were saying, like let's be excited about what we're excited about. I'm just not a pen person.
I've seen your note cards, Eric.
When we all sometimes I'd be like, I really want this pen, and it's gonna be really hard to find, and I know when I find it, it's not gonna be cheap, and then I'd be like, well, you save a couple dollars each day, and and make your pen fund, and then when you find something you really like, some people like handbags, some people like shoes, or
Yeah.
Everybody has their thing, so...
Or sometimes multiple things. And for one example, sometimes you just have many small iridescent collections of things that you
Yes.
love.
I'm actually a crow. Yeah. I'm just a crow in a person's body.
The other bingo card is Celia reveals yet another
hobby of collecting
mini
hobby.
hoard.
Are you, out of curiosity, and I'm not, I don't ascribe to like horoscopes all that much, but are you a Gemini?
I am not, although I
Okay.
have many Geminis in my life. I am
I'm
an
Gemini.
Aquarius with a Sag moon and Leo rising.
Ooh. I think I'm also Leo rising. I think I'm a Gemini with a Cancer moon, Leo rising. But I'm not entirely certain what all of that means. So if anybody wants to tell me, you know, I've just been told it means that I collect hobbies and discard them fairly frequently, and that seems to be pretty correct. You know,
I collect
I like
hobbies. I don't discard them. They just keep accumulating.
yeah, I'll follow it to its logical conclusion, you know, where I'm like, okay, now I know about that, and then I'll write about it.
And next, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so yeah.
So are
Any
there
other?
events with the book launch coming up that you're excited about? I mean, do you have things that that you've been like in that zone of really cool milestones? Is there like a local bookstore that you're excited to go to?
Yeah. So I'm local to the Denver area. And West Side Books is hosting my launch. We're doing it the
Oh,
day after the book comes out because I just like the way things worked out. I'm going to be there with another local author named David Slayton, who has a book, Dark Moon, Shallow Sea, that you should read. It's awesome. He actually, his sequel's coming out like 2 weeks before mine, I think. So we're doing kind of like an in conversation thing at West Side Books. But I love that bookstore. It is small, intimate, queer owned, great selection. The new owner, Matt, is amazing. So I'm really excited that I get to be there, and that'll be on the 24th of June. I'll be doing a signing at the Barnes and Noble in Superior that weekend. So if you can't come to the event, it is, I think it's a Wednesday night event, which I know, you know, Wednesday, middle of the work week. So yeah, if they wanted to see me there, I'll be signing books at the Barnes and Noble in Superior, Colorado. And I love that. It's a really good Barnes and Noble. It's got a lot more of a oh, what's the word? I'm like for kind of an independent feel, a smaller, cozier sort of a space, which is really nice. And then what else do I have coming down the line? It's a ways out, but I know that in November I'm going to be doing something with the Boulder Bookstore on the 18th of November. And it looks like I'll be doing a little bit of traveling. I don't know if I can speak to them quite yet because I don't think it's all been, you know, hammered down, but some events, coming up maybe in other states. So we'll stay tuned for that.
where's the best way if people want to be able to look up your tour schedule or where you'll be in person? What's the best way for them to access that?
Yeah, so I have a website at cncuster.com, and I will post my events there eventually. I promise. That's a good reminder to me to get that up in the next like few days before this comes live. So yeah, cncuster.com. It's also where they can check out the book, and I do have like content warnings there if you just want to make sure, you know, if it's a good fit for you. I think that's a, you know, important conversation to have with yourself before picking up a piece of media. And yeah, and then my Instagram. I am most active on Instagram, so it's my handle is cnkwrites at, you know, amp or little at sign thing. I should know what it's called. I'm an English teacher, but we'll call it an at sign. It's the official designation for today. I have a lot of coffee and adrenaline in my system.
Cien, it's been wonderful having you. I'm glad that we had a chance to talk. I'm looking forward to reading The Blood Weaver. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Hopefully you'll send me some insights as you go through this process that I'm going to be following a little bit further down the road. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate having an opportunity to talk to you.
Yeah,
And
I'm so glad you guys had me here. It was just an honor when you asked. I was like, oh my God, yes. So,
all right, until next time, everybody, keep reading.
yeah.
You've been listening to Connect the Plots with Cillian and Eric. Thanks. Please connect with us on social media. We're Connect the Plots Pod on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. You can also support us and gain access to exclusive content on our Patreon. That's at patreon.com/connecttheplotspod, all spelled out. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.